Welcome to Grace Fellowship Baptist Church Wednesday evening Bible study for Wednesday, April 26th, 2023. We are in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 14. Let's start in verse 1. Joab, son of Zeruiah, knew that the king's heart longed for Absalom, so Joab sent someone to Tekoa and had a wise woman brought from there. He said to her, "Pretend you are in mourning. Dress in mourning clothes and don't use any cosmetic lotions. Act like a woman who has spent many days grieving for the dead. Then go to the king and speak these words to him." And Joab put these words in her mouth. When the woman from Tekoa went to the king, she fell with her face to the ground to pay him honor, and she said, "Help me, O king." The king asked her, "What is troubling you?" She said, "I am indeed a widow. My husband is dead. I, your servant, had 2 sons. They got into a fight with each other in the field, and no one was there to separate them. One struck the other and killed him. Now the whole clan has risen up against your servant. They say, 'Hand over the one who struck his brother down, so that we may put him to death for the life of his brother whom he killed. Then we will get rid of the heir as well.' They would put out the only burning coal I have left, leaving my husband neither name nor descendant on the face of the earth." The king said to the woman, "Go home, and I will issue an order in your behalf." But the woman from Tekoa said to him, "My lord the king, let the blame rest on me and my father's family, and let the king and his throne be without guilt." The king replied, "If anyone says anything to you, bring him to me, and he will not bother you again." She said, "Then let the king invoke the Lord his God to prevent the avenger of blood from adding to the destruction, so that my son will not be destroyed." "As surely as the Lord lives," he said, "not one hair of your son's head will fall to the ground." Then the woman said, "Let your servant speak a word to my lord the king." "Speak," he replied. The woman said, "Why then have you devised a thing like this against the people of God? When the king says this, does he not convict himself? For the king has not brought back his banished son. Like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be recovered, so we must die. But God does not take away life. Instead, he devises ways so that a banished person may not remain estranged from him. And now I have come to say this to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. Your servant thought, I will speak to the king. Perhaps he will do what his servant asks. Perhaps the king will agree to deliver his servant from the hand of the man who is trying to cut off both me and my son from the inheritance God gave us. And now your servant says, may the word of the Lord the king bring me rest, for my lord the king is like an angel of God in discerning good and evil. May the Lord your God be with you." I'm going to stop right there and pause. This is the beginning story. Absalom is not in exile. He ran. He's not banished. He's not been legally prevented from coming home. He's the one that ran away, and he went to live with his mother's people and the king of Geshur. And he's living there in self-exile. He doesn't want to face justice. He doesn't want to, and he's content like that. He's not sending messengers back saying, "Dad, please take me back. Please forgive me." He's just living as he's living with another part of his family, which he is. Joab, the general, wants him back for some reason. He's apparently spoken to David about this several times, and David has not hearkened into his words, hasn't sent emissaries to invite his son back. He's kind of let things lie, going, don't know how to deal with him. I don't want to deal with him with the kind of justice that he deserves to, have him killed for committing murder. I don't want to. And so his self exile is just a convenient thing for David to allow to happen. Joab is not willing to let that rest that way. And so he devises this plan, and he gets this actor to help him. And she tells this tale that Joab and her know will get David to think along the lines of justice and preventing the death of somebody. And if you look at the Mosaic Code, the law for this is, yes, that other son should die, but the widow should get the land, and the clan should give her a husband that doesn't have any inheritance himself. Sorry about that. And so the clan's being wrong, and in how they're doing it. The tale she's telling is the clan is saying this widow that had two sons, the sons fought, one of them killed the other one. The clan wants to kill the other son as justice, and then take the inheritance away from mom. Well, that's the wrong way to do it. What the Mosaic Code said is, yes, you kill the murderer, but then you turn around and the widow that's left, you give her a husband and she has the land, and the new husband, his son gets to inherit the land. And by the code that came up, we don't know exactly when it came up, but our record is significantly later than David, but the indications are it had been there for a very long time. So may well have been established during the Judges period. If you do this, the husband can't inherit other land since his children are going to inherit this land, and so he doesn't get land that he then distributes to children elsewhere. So the clan would be giving her basically a husband that wouldn't get land, and he would lose whatever little inheritance he had. And very often it was like youngest son of a man that had a bunch of kids but didn't have much land. And so they would get an insignificant portion each if he divided the land up. And one of them would be like, yeah, I'll give my small portion up to get this portion over here. And that was an equitable way to do that. And David, he's king. He says, I'll take care of it. He doesn't tell her how he's going to take care of it, because he knows that he needs to investigate further to do proper justice. He can't just decide off of hearing one side of the story that, hey, here's the answer, and then write a letter and say, do this because I'm king. He needs to send emissaries there to Tekoa and find out what the rest of the clan's vision is, and then he gets to put his 2 cents worth in, and he's probably going to remind them, hey, you can't take the inheritance away from her because the brothers committed murder. Yeah, sure, the brother deserves to die, but she's got to have a husband that doesn't have land, and then, that will be the inheritance. Or if she had daughters, the son-in-law could come back and be adopted and then get inheritance or whatever, because the daughter would get the inheritance. There was ways around that if she was too old to have children. And the implication is that she was old enough that children were unlikely. Now, this was a made-up story. So if he had investigated, he would have found. She then shortchanges it because at the end, she changes the topic slightly. Okay, yeah, you've given me justice. Now, what about justice for your family? And turns the tables on him, just like Nathan did at the beginning of this story when he had adultery with Bathsheba and killed Uriah and then took her as a wife. Nathan, told the story, and he was very justice-oriented. Said, yeah, that he deserves to die, but he's going to pay back 4 times, which is what the legal thing was. Well, now this wise woman is doing essentially the same thing. Thing is, they're not doing it at God's hand. Nathan, when he confronted David, was doing it at God's hand, and God had told Nathan how to do it. Joab is using the same playbook. He's heard the story. He's thought how to do this. And he does it, but neither he nor the widow are actually righteous in how they do that. Now, they use the same kind of strategy. Here's this story that is analogous, and David will see the justice in it, and then we say, yeah, this applies to you too. And that's what they've done. And so that's the story. They've come up with this analogous story that the logic is the same, and they get David's reaction, and then they say, why didn't you bring Absalom home? Verse 18. Then the king said to the woman, do not keep from me the answer to what I'm going to ask you. Let my lord the king speak, the woman said. The king asked, isn't this the hand of Joab with you in all this? The woman answered, as surely as you live, the Lord my king, no one can turn to the right or the left from anything my lord the king says. Yes, it was your servant Joab who instructed me to do this and who put all these words into the mouth of your servant. Your servant Joab did this to change the present situation. My lord has wisdom like an angel of God. He knows everything that happens in the land. The king said to Joab, very well, I will do it. Go bring back the young man Absalom. Joab fell with his face to the ground to pay him honor, and he blessed the king. Joab said, today your servant knows that he has found favor in your eyes, my lord the king, because the king has granted his servant's request. So the end of the confrontation with the king, David knows who in his court is advocating for Absalom to return. And he figures it out as soon as Absalom's mentioned, and he asks her, did Joab put you up to this? And when she answers yes, and she's using appropriate flowery language, being very complimentary, and being respectful. She is actually in a dangerous situation if David is opposed to it, and if he saw this as treasonous, she could lose her head, and so she's being very respectful. You have to appreciate that, and ascribing to David almost godlike powers or prophetic powers, being able to know things that a human being shouldn't be able to know. Now, David is not that way, and he knows he's not that way, and he knows God doesn't speak to him. He knows he hires Nathan the prophet if he needs God to speak to him. He hired priests to speak God's word to him and stuff. So he's not, he knows he's not that man. And he knows she's just being complimentary to deflect anger. But he knows who it is that did the politics. And so, after she admits, yes, it's Joab, and, he then calls Joab in, or Joab may have been present. This being in the court where David is hearing public cases being brought, and people are petitioning the king for writing of grievances and stuff. Joab is probably present as one of the observers, one of the people that gets to help decide cases in some cases, or at least be a witness to what's going on. And so David then gives Joab the order that, yes, he can go bring Absalom back from Geshur. That's the conclusion of this part of the story. Joab gets the permission from David that he wants. He's been trying to get David to do it, apparently, because David knows who's going to set David up to do this woman. And he doesn't have to second guess which one of my multiple people that want Absalom back set this up. He knows who set it up just because of how it's done. And so he confronts Joab and gives Joab permission. He is still in a quandary. He loves his son Absalom. He misses him, but he also knows Absalom is not fit to be king. He doesn't need to be brought back in full fellowship. He doesn't need to be made part of the government. He's a man that's unfit to be king, and David knows that. And it's just very convenient if he stays in Geshur, and if he gets involved in the politics there and stays there. The thing is, Absalom is acting like his mother's home country, not like the Israelites would. She's taught him how to be by how she knows they function. And David knows that's inappropriate for God's people. That court intrigue and backstabbing and murder is allowed as court politics is inappropriate for God's people. And here he's murdered his brother and he's fled. Justice would say, Israelite justice would say he's to be executed. David really doesn't want to see him dead. And so it's very convenient for David if he just stays away and he goes, he's out of my jurisdiction, and if he comes back, then we'll deal with it. Now Joab is pushing to have him come back. David's going to have to deal with it. Puts David in a conundrum. But after this, he is also now in another conundrum. He knows he's wrong if he doesn't bring him back, but so just doing convenient thing is not the right thing. So he grants Joab the authority to go bring Absalom back. Verse 23. Then Joab went to Geshur and brought Absalom back to Jerusalem. But the king said, he must go to his own house, he must not see my face. So Absalom went to his own house and did not see the face of the king. So After David grants Joab the right to go to Geshur and bring Absalom back, he realizes he can't just bring him back into the court and pretend nothing happened. And so now he has to do something official. Yes, you can bring him back, but he has to go to his house. The implication is this is semi-house arrest. He can do business, but he can't come back to court. He can't come see David. He can't come to the palace. He can't interact like he's a king's son. He can be a wealthy man, owning his own house, having his own property, doing his own work, but he's no longer part of the government, is basically what David says. It's kind of an internal banishment. He's banished out of the family and banished out of the family business, but he's left alive and allowed to do his business. Absalom will not see this very well. And we'll get to that here in just a minute. Because, Absalom, self-banishment's one thing. Self-exile's one thing. To be brought back but not restored to fellowship, that's a worse cut, because now he's not with any family. And a very family-oriented culture. Both his mother's culture and his dad's culture are very clannish, very family-oriented, and he's basically banished from both families. He's got to do it alone in a society that views people that do it alone as somehow messed up and broken and unfit. So David has put an albatross around his neck that says you're unfit to be, an adult human being in our society. You're not part of a group. You're not part of a clan. You're not part of the family. And that is, a really hard punishment to bear. I'm not saying David was wrong to do that, but he should have made it explicit instead of implicit if he was going to do it. Just flat make a court ruling because you killed your brother, instead of going through the legal process and then you ran to hide away from your sin. Yeah, I'm going to bring you back, but I'm going to put you in internal banishment. You can't be part of this family. You can't be part of your mother's family. You have to make it on your own. You have the property you have, and you have your servants you already have. But he didn't do that. He effectively did it by not dealing with it, but saying you can't come back. You can come back, but you can't come back to me. David didn't handle it well. David's too emotionally connected to it, and he doesn't consult other people. He's just reacting. And because he's reacting and not thinking it through, not getting good counsel, he's not asking other people, what do I need to do about Absalom? He's just kind of ignoring it. He ends up messing it up even worse. Verse 25. In all Israel there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his foot there was no blemish in him. Whenever he cut the hair on his head, he used to cut his hair from time to time when it became too heavy for him. He would weigh it, and its weight was 200 shekels by royal standard. By the way, 200 shekels is approximately 5 pounds. 5 pounds is a lot of hair. So, when he started getting about 5 pounds of hair on his head, it would be burdensome, and he'd have his hair cut, and he had 5 pounds of hair cut off. That's an amazing amount of hair. It had to be quite long, and his hair had to be very thick. Now, it probably had oils and stuff in it. He would have been anointing his hair. Their custom is, uh, well, they kept their hair greased in olive oil because that kept lice down. It would smother the lice. Um, it would soothe the scalp. It made their hair look better. And so it was the practical thing that they could do to keep head lice down and keep their scalps healthy and make the hair look attractive. And so 5 pounds of hair, including the olive oil that would be in it. And if you anoint your hair with olive oil daily, which he was wealthy enough to do, uh, the new olive oil would probably wash out most of the old olive oil, and it wouldn't uh, get rancid, and it wouldn't thicken up and gel up in the hair and coat it real thick. But just doing it daily, there's going to be residual left, and some of it's going to get old enough that it's going to harden up and make a coat on the hair. And so, uh, and they didn't wash their hair with soap and water. That would have been just anathema to their society. You washed it with olive oil. And if you were poor, you used barely enough to get it slick so you could comb it out, and that was enough to keep the odor down and keep the lice at bay, and it made it look decent. It would allow dirt to stick to it, dust and stuff, and it would get fairly heavy. If you were wealthier, you would use enough that you'd wash out the old oil with the new oil, not just basically dampen it down again today. And in that case, the hair stayed cleaner, and you could wash the dirt out, and you could wash the sweat out, and the salts and things like that. It was kind of expensive because, I mean, you're talking using a fair amount of olive oil every day to do that. And that would also get a lot of the cruddy oil out that started to harden up because it would dissolve out and dissolve into the fresh oil. And you could do that, and your hair would stay. But, if you assume that a quarter of the way of the hair was the olive oil and 3/4 of it was hair, that's still a lot of hair. Um, you know, he has an impressive head of hair. Some of the manuscripts say he cut his hair every year. Some of them say that he cut it when it got heavy. We don't know exactly which one the original manuscripts were. That's why this translation says he cut it from time to time. Apparently he cut it at a specific kind of regular time. The implication is that regular time was probably every spring. So if he cut his hair every spring when it started to get warm and it started to get, the long hair would get hot and it was time to get it short for the summer, just like he sheared sheep in the spring, he would cut his hair in the spring. Once a year, having grown 5 pounds of hair, that's an amazing amount of hair. And to keep that kind of hair up, he would have had to put some work in it. And it says he was handsome from his head to his, from top of his head to the sole of his feet. So he was a good-looking man. He was a good physical specimen. Appearance was important to him, and he kept his hair neat. And he had a lot of hair, which was a characteristic that in that culture was viewed as a very masculine thing. If you had good-looking hair and you could keep it up, it said you had a good diet, it said you were healthy, it said that you had enough disposable income to treat your hair. And in Absalom's case, having that much hair also said he was somebody with a thick head of hair and his hair was a prominent part of his style, and he grew a lot of it, he was very healthy with it. So, you know, we get this idea that he was vain about his appearance, and people saw him as very attractive and very physically charismatic. Verse 27. 3 sons and a daughter were born to Absalom. The daughter's name was Tamar, and she became a beautiful woman. Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. Then Absalom sent for Joab in order to send him to the king, but Joab refused to come to him. So he sent a second time, but he refused to come. Then he said to his servants, "Look, Joab's field is next to mine. He has barley there. Go set it on fire." So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Absalom is still the same moral reprobate he was earlier. He sends messengers to Joab, says, "Come talk to me." He doesn't tell the messengers to tell him, "Hey, here's what I want to talk about," which was the polite way to do it. Joab's a busy man. Why should he mess with Absalom much? Absalom can run his own business. He doesn't need Joab's help. You know, Joab is running the business he should for the king and his own inheritance and his own, so to speak, family business. And so Joab, why should he just drop what he's doing and go visit with Absalom? Joab sends for him twice. He doesn't come. And instead of, insisting, "Here's what I need to do, and here's why I need to talk to you. Let me send this message of what I want you to do for me, and what you need to do for me." He just turns to, "I'm going to get your attention any way I can." And so he tells his servants to burn Joab's barley field. So he turns to vandalism as a means of communication instead of explaining what he needs and sending a messenger. He's learned the politics of his mother's land. He's acting like they do. He's not culturally correct for the Israelites. And honestly, he's not even thinking it through and doing what's right. I mean, most cultures in the world, you send the messenger with at least an outline of what you want to say. "Hey, I want to talk to Joab about being restored back to the family meal. You're the one that brought me here. I needed somebody to intervene with my dad. I want you to intervene with my dad." Which is basically what he wants. And, you tell the messenger, say that, and, Joab can then respond to the messenger, "I'm not going to go talk to him face to face, but tell him I'll do what I can," or tell him he needs to go to the palace directly, or, whatever Joab thinks is appropriate. Joab can respond if you give him the message. But just demand that you got to come in an audience with me. He's acting like he's king with no authority at all to command anybody. Joab's obeying David, and he has some time that he gets to run his own business. Obviously, he has a barley field, if nothing else. He has other things. I'm sure he's as prominent as he is. He's gotten a lot of wealth and a lot of land and servants, and he's got things to tend to because everybody farmed. Even if you were a wealthy man and you didn't do any of the planting or harvesting or tending, and you had servants do that for you, you still had to feed yourself and the servants. And so you had to, manage all of your property and make sure that the people who were managing your people and your property did their job. And so you had some sort of oversight. And Joab's therefore a busy man. It takes work. And he's not just going to drop what he's doing because one of the king's sons says, "Come run, I want to talk to you." Why? If you don't give me a reason, I've got more important things to do, like the king's business. Particularly if you're the one that's in internal banishment. Joab may know there's a potential that Absalom, wants him to help set Absalom up on the throne or something. And, Joab will have no part of that. But, Joab's being appropriate when he just doesn't come. I mean, that sounds rude, but you got to understand how rude Absalom was. To send a messenger that demands you come and visit with me face to face without telling me why, yeah, that's rude. And Absalom is just being rude. And so then when he sets the field on fire, yeah, he's got Joab's attention now. Joab's going to come in. Let's face it, he's a soldier. One of the things he's going to think about is, I'm going to get revenge. But he's going to ask questions first because he doesn't want to get David mad. I mean, David's his employer. He's going to find out what's going on. Why did you do that? And what can we do about it? And, before you demand, well, you got to pay me for the barley you destroyed. Which is probably what he's on his mind. But he's also probably coming, like a good soldier would be, armed so that if things go down, he's not bringing fists to a knife fight. He's bringing his sword skills and his war skills to a petulant young man that doesn't understand. Now, a thing that I read and just skipped over in all this discussion, while he's there, in that 2 years, 2 years that he was in Jerusalem, he had 3 sons and a daughter. Now that tells us something about Absalom. He's wealthy enough to have multiple wives. The best guess is he has at least 4 wives. Because typically you had a child about every 2 years. A woman had a child about every 2 years. Sooner than that, it was hard to keep them with enough food and nutrition to stay healthy. And there's this kind of natural cycle that if you're nursing one child, you tend not to ovulate and get pregnant again. And so you generally have to wean one before you get pregnant with the next. If in 2 years he has 4 kids, he didn't just have one wife. 4 kids in 2 years, unless she's having, twins, is physically impossible. And I think Scripture would have noted that if he had triplets or if he had 2 sets of twins. And so he has multiple wives. If he has 4 kids in 2 years, he's probably got a minimum of 4 wives. So he's a fairly wealthy man to hold that kind of wealth to be able to support 4 women. And, he names the daughter that he has after his sister. He wants to honor the sister. And Scripture notes she was a beautiful woman. Now, even if he conceived her the day he got back, 9 months later she's born, 2 years, she's only a year and a quarter old at the end of the 2 years. Uh, the the term that's used there is for an adult woman. Uh, this is another example of they're not being chronological. They know that they were born there in Jerusalem after he got back. But then they're telling the rest of the story. She becomes a beautiful woman, and she becomes a beautiful woman after her dad dies. But he was a physical, beautiful uh, human being, a beautiful man. So his daughter being beautiful is not all that amazing. Let's face it, his sister was a beautiful woman. That's why Amnon wanted her. Yeah. So she was attractive. Absalom's daughter is also attractive when she's an adult, which is much later than the rest of the story. So the writers are telling the rest of the story that about his family, his daughter, his sons. And apparently he has no other children before this, so this is the family he ends up with, the offspring he ends up with. Verse 31. Then Joab did go to Absalom's house, and he said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" Absalom said to Joab, "Look, I sent word to you and said, 'Come here so I can send you to the king to ask, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me if I were still there. Now then, I want to see the king's face, and if I'm guilty of anything, let him put me to death.'" So when he finally gets Joab in his presence, he basically is demanding that Joab be his intermediary to go get him back to the king's face. And he is very bold in claiming, if I'm guilty of anything, well, you're guilty of something. You murdered your brother. You didn't follow the law to deal with him. And then you ran off. But, he says, if I'm guilty of anything, let David kill me. So he's basically putting a challenge up to David, bring me to trial, convict me, and then kill me yourself. Be man enough to take care of this yourself. That's a very foolish thing for Absalom to do. If David were getting good advice with that challenge, he would call him in, put him on trial for murder, have him convicted, and then have him executed. Be done with it. David doesn't want to do that. He's kind of, because it's family, he's being wishy-washy. David makes another mistake when he doesn't do that. But we'll get to that in a minute. Verse 33, so Joab went to the king and told him this. Then the king summoned Absalom, and he came in and bowed down with his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. So David then allows Absalom to come into his presence and be acknowledged as his son. David still loves Absalom. We'll get to how much later, but he also knows this is, this is a bad situation. David doesn't have the wisdom to know how to handle it. Absalom is a very arrogant individual. That's why he challenged Joab to say, hey, tell the king, if I'm guilty of something, kill me yourself. He has, even though it's been 5 years, he's forgotten that, he's a murderer. or at least claims he doesn't know it. He's claiming essentially by his actions that what I did was correct. The thing is, in that society, there would have been ways for him to be the executioner for the clan. If he had gone to his dad and says, Amnon raped my sister, I want to be the person in the clan that executes him because what he did was wrong. David would have had to do that, but then Absalom, if he got the king's permission, with David's permission, being the patriarch of the clan, he would have been perfectly right. If he had accused him in a court of law and says the Mosaic law says he should be stoned, and then prosecuted it and had Amnon stoned, Absalom would have been correct, and the people would have seen him as a decisive and wise and smart and fair and just leader. But they see him as a petulant crybaby that commits murder because he was offended and then runs off because he doesn't want to suffer the consequences of murder. And he's arrogant in telling Joab, if I've done anything wrong, let David kill me. Well, you've done something wrong. You need to be executed. But David's unwilling to do that, and I understand the father's heart. I understand why he doesn't want to have Absalom executed. But by doing nothing, David causes this situation to fester. And chapter 15 is what happens when it festers too much. It's already festered some. He stayed in self-exile in Geshur. And honestly, he would have probably been better off to just leave him in self-exile, leave him outside the country, not bring him back. Joab stirs the pot, though, and causes him to bring him back. Then Joab realizes this was a dumb thing. I shouldn't have brought him back, and doesn't deal with it. Absalom and Joab are the only two that are interacting in any way, shape, form, or fashion because Joab brought him back. And so now Absalom's trying to get Joab to do Absalom's business for him. And he does. And David basically forgives his son, kisses him. Absalom probably takes this as, I am good, I am back in good graces, I can do anything I want, because he's that kind of arrogant. And he knows he's good looking, he knows that he can manipulate people, and he's fairly wealthy, and he decides, I want more. Holy Father, you are the God of history. You knew this was going to happen. You warned David through Nathan back decades before when Bathsheba had the son and then he died. It's now coming to fruition, and the results are terrible. Lord, help us to realize that and to admit to our sin sooner rather than later, that we don't try to hide it. We don't try to hide it from you. We don't try to hide it from each other, but we instead, when we realize we've messed up, admit I've failed and seek to stop the damage as quickly as possible, to make things right if it's possible. If it's not, to at least seek forgiveness and to build good relations. Lord, we ask that you would make our heart tender, make our hearts responsive to you, that when we realize we have sinned and we've fallen short, and we do, that we'll seek your face and repent and turn back again to your way. Whether it's the first time or, as you told your disciples, 7 times 70 times, the 490th time. We know you are gracious and forgiving God. Help us to not be arrogant like Absalom was, thinking that whatever we do is right and that our actions are justifiable, that we don't continually up the ante and be rude and arrogant. And Lord, when we see people like that, help us to understand that they are like that and interact with them as little as possible, not try to encourage them, not try to placate them, but we will seek your face about what the right way to handle them is. Lord, our land is just ate up with people that are that kind of people, arrogant and rude and uncompromising, and not willing to take no for an answer. Lord, I ask that you send your Spirit through our land, that you would convict your people, that's us here in your church, that we would be right first, and then we would tell others, and that you would convict the lost, that they would come to know you as Lord and Savior, and be obedient to you in turn. And Lord, we're desperate for a move of your Holy Spirit through this land again. It's happening just as you've recorded in Scripture, that if we aren't obedient to you, we have broken relationships. You will send famine and weather disaster and other natural disasters, and you will send disease, and you will send brokenness and crime and murder, and all kinds of evil will be rampant in the land. And we just need to look around and see that. Lord, help us to be your people that humble ourselves before you and pray and seek your face and turn from our wicked way. In your holy name, amen. I am your host, Frank Reich, Associate Pastor of Family and Ministry at Grace Fellowship Baptist Church, and this has been the Wednesday evening Bible study for Wednesday, April 26th, 2023. This was recorded on Sunday, April 23rd, 2023. We had a good service today, and I appreciate Pastor Oscar and his sermons on repentance and idols, and like his sermon today. It was good. I hope to see you Wednesday night when we can discuss this. If not, I hope to see you Sunday, and if not, I'll see you on YouTube. You have a blessed week.